Yo, what is going on YouTube? It is your boy GZTV. We are back with another video, and yes, I'm getting that NFL video worked on, but I wanted to come out here and talk about the 2017 American supernatural horror film directed by David F. Sandberg, written by Gary Doberman, and produced by Peter Safran and James Wan. Here it is. Here we go. Annabelle Creation. It is Halloween fucking season, guys, and you know, I've heard about this creepy doll for years, of course. She's a very iconic horror legend. Seen her pop up all over the place since it's Halloween, since it is October. I know I'm a little late, we're like a week into October, but I figured why not finally check it out and review it on the YouTube channel. I might have watched a variant of one of these movies at some point, like a little snippet of it, because my cousin used to be a huge horror fan, but this is my first full experience with it. I've always known Annabelle, again, was kind of iconic in her own way, so I wanted to see if this was one of those overhyped haunted dolls goes boo movies, or if there was actually something here. And honestly, we will get to it in the review. I was pretty surprised though. This movie actually worked. It's a horror prequel that feels like it matters. You've got this doll maker and his wife. We'll get to the premise in a second, but they lose their daughter, and out of grief and desperation, something dark creeps in. Literally one of his dolls. That's such a simple concept, but man, it's really effective here. Now, yeah, the setting is your typical middle of nowhere farmhouse, dusty rooms, flickering lights, locked doors, all that. But that's fine. It's familiar horror territory and it's used well. And I like the horror genre, and to an extent, some of the tropes are fine and it adds some nostalgia to it. The whole first act, you're just uncomfortable. You know something's not right. The husband's acting weird. The wife's locked away in another room. You hear noises. It's classic setup stuff, but it still gets under your skin. So right off the bat, you know, I was like, okay, this is better than I expected. So without further ado, let's get into it. All right, so the basic premise, you know how these videos go. Years after their daughter dies, a doll maker and his wife open their home to a group of orphan girls and a nun. We know nuns and all of this like religious stuff is a huge part of the Conjuring universe, which I forgot to mention this film is a part of, as well as all the other Annabelle films. And for Halloween, that is going to be our main focus, is the Conjuring franchise, and I'm very excited for that. Everyone's trying to move on, start fresh, but of course one of the girls finds something she shouldn't. She breaks a rule, she goes in a room she's not supposed to, she finds the doll, and from that moment on things just get worse and worse. Of course, it's a classic horror movie setup. You know, I like this kind of setup though because it's simple and it doesn't expect you to know anything about the other Annabelle movies, and it works perfectly as a prequel because this is the first Annabelle movie I've seen and it feels like a really good introduction. You can jump in here totally blind. Chronologically, it even makes sense to start with this one, and that's what I did. That's why this one's coming first, even though it came out after the 2014 original film. And the pacing is honestly great here. It starts calm, almost wholesome, and then you just feel the evil creeping in. You go from, oh, these poor kids, to, alright, something's definitely off here. And the way it builds tension instead of rushing into chaos, that's something I really respect. It doesn't really clip farm all that much. It's like, yeah, let's build this and actually take our time here. There's also this quiet religious and grief-stricken layer underneath everything. The loss of their child, the guilt, the faith aspect. It gives the scares a reason to exist. It's not just spooky for the sake of being spooky. You can tell the people making this actually cared about why things are happening. It's a very well-made movie, and I'm about to get into why. Now let's talk about what works, because there's honestly a lot that does. The good is going to be a pretty decent section here. Just start with the cinematography and lighting. It's absolutely phenomenal. You have David F. Sandberg, and I've had some decent experiences with him. I think he did Lights Out. He did a couple of other movies. I didn't watch the Shazam movie he did, but he did that as well. He really knows how to mess with your head. I think he's a really good director based on some of the stuff I saw, and just over the years he's made some great work, and this is the first time I've probably watched a movie of his in a while, and honestly I love it. There's this constant play between shadow and silence where your eyes are scanning the background just waiting for something to move. That's great horror filmmaking. You know it's coming, but it still gets you. It's still scary. Even how predictable things happen, it's still a very effective movie, and that's when you know the direction is solid. Again, that's how you know a horror movie is very well made. And let's just get into the scares, because obviously you can go into this movie, you can watch it and be like, oh well, those are pretty generic, I knew that was coming. Sure, but they're still very effective. It's still a very, very scary movie. I was very much on the edge of my seat all throughout. I don't care how many horror movies you've seen. You know I've seen a lot. I've seen at least 100. We did that whole thing where I did the scratch it poster. I don't have a picture of that, but I can find it online and pop it on the screen for you guys. I did that to kind of like kickstart my big movie shindig on this channel. But when this thing wants to be scary, it is. It can genuinely be scary, and there are some weirdos out there that are obviously like very numb to it, but like Black Demon figure, that thing's pure nightmare fuel. That shit's creepy. It's not like I'm gonna be staying up at night like, oh, this thing's in my head, but like it's very effective as a scary movie. Every time it popped up, it's like, yeah, I'd probably get the fuck out of here, which obviously there's the whole trope of characters making stupid decisions, which is fine, but there you go. Character wise, Linda and Janice are absolute standouts. Those are the best characters in the film. It's not easy for kids to carry a horror movie, but but I think they absolutely crushed it in their lead roles. I can't remember the names. There's like Lulu something and Tabitha something. I can't remember the actors' names, but you've got Janice, who's vulnerable but curious, and Linda, who's brave and grounded. They're basically two sides of how people kind of react to fear. You have one person that's super vulnerable and super weak, but like still wants to know what's going on, and then you have the other person who's a little more grounded, but they're still willing to do a lot of things. Their friendship feels real too, and obviously like the sisterhood, which makes the later stuff hit pretty hard. The nun's presence was pretty good too. She added just enough of that faith versus evil kind of dynamic without taking over the story. She was fine, and I love how the film kind of balances supernatural scares with kind of some emotional undertones. The grief of losing a child is what kicked off this entire nightmare, and it's always in the background, haunting the parents as much as the house itself. Also, major props to the set design. I think, again, for how generic some of the stuff can look, I still think it fits the vibe of a horror film. It fits the Conjuring universe. The house feels old, haunted, genuinely cursed, like you genuinely feel like there's some fucked up shit happening here. And going into this, I did think it was going to be a pretty corny film, but I will say it was pretty awesome. Like, it's one of those settings where even in broad daylight, you wouldn't feel safe. You're looking at these wide shots in the countryside, and you're looking at this place. It's like, nah, something's very fucked up about this. You have a well way off in the distance. You have this craggly looking tree coming out the ground. It's like, the atmosphere is just so thick you can practically feel it through the screen. I really like it for that, so that's the good. So getting into the bad, I do think this is going to be a pretty nitpicky section, which is fine, but the scarecrow subplot is pretty weak. I think that's one of the major things. It didn't really land. It didn't really make sense to have this scarecrow. I mean, I get the symbolism, but the whole demon inside the scarecrow thing kind of felt out of place. That was the one thing they went for. It seems like they kind of tried to go for like a third party type of like demon, and it didn't really work. It looked creepy, sure. I do like the look of the demon, like it was very effective in that sense, but narratively it just, again, didn't make sense. This thing was fucking stowed away in this barn or on the field or wherever the girls originally found it when they were kind of out exploring the area, and then all of a sudden later on in the film it's like, boom, okay, this thing's fucking moving. We're sitting in this truck trying to get away, trying to get it to start, and there's some really cool, like, clever, like, horror aspects with that, them shutting the lights on and off and it like starting to move, you know, that whole trope, but it's weird. I don't know, it didn't really make sense. It was like they wanted one more, again, big horror visual and said, just go with it. That's how we're gonna introduce the demon. Let's just foreshadow the hell out of this thing. Some of the scares are cookie cutter. That can be a weakness. Doors slamming, shadows darting, loud stingers, the usual suspects. They work, but they don't really reinvent anything, so they're kind of there. There's also kind of some bad parts, and that's something unique I want to try with my videos, is there's good and bad to certain things, and I think the scares definitely go in that category. I think the doll maker too, the actual guy like running the house, was a bit underused. I do think he could have been involved a little bit more. He's got this interesting emotional setup, but then he just kind of disappears halfway through the movie. He doesn't come back until like later in the movie. He's sitting down with Linda and she's like, oh, by the way, Janice went into this room, found this doll in the closet, and he's like, she did what? And then it like turns into this whole thing. He dies, and it's like, well, you could have done a little more with him because he was the main catalyst for all this shit happening, really. And the side characters, man, I don't know. The other orphan girls, kind of background extras, I didn't really mind them. I don't absolutely hate that they're in this movie, but at the same time, the only characters that really matter are Linda, Janice, the nun, and of course the doll, Annabelle, who's an inanimate object, the demon, I don't know. They scream, they cry, and then they kind of just vanish from the story like it's whatever. They're kind of just used to add to the fear with the audience. Like, they might as well be in our seats because they didn't really add anything. You could have cut 2 or 3 of them and literally nothing would change. I get why they're there, raise the stakes, kind of have a group. I do kind of like those type of horror films, but still. Just getting into the okay, this is kind of the middle ground stuff that didn't bother me but didn't really add much either. The okay, it's a mid aspect. It's something that if you took it out of the film, it'd be like, okay. The main nun, Charlotte, is kind of there. I know I said earlier she's a decent character to have in this movie and she matters a little bit, but I don't know. She's fine. She helps the story along, but she doesn't leave much of an impression. She's a cool character. It's nice, again, to have the religious aspects and to have an actual nun. However, you get into the evil nun cameo, that little connection to the Conjuring universe, kind of the fan service, that was also kind of there. It was slick. Like, I liked it. I didn't feel forced. It just added some spice for people who've seen the other films. I guess that could be seen as a good, but again, it's kind of there. If they took that whole like evil nun cameo, that whole fan service stuff, I obviously have seen both of the nun movies. I didn't review the first one, which we will be doing that this month, hopefully, if time permits. But that whole thing, like showing her in the picture, like, who is that person? It's like, oh, I don't know. It's like kind of a precursor to the original Nun, so that's kind of cool. But at the same time, like, not knowing the Nun is actually coming out. I don't know when the Nun came out. I don't really know, but we can move on from that. One thing I still don't get, that's kind of in the mixed, the pastor guy. I don't know why the guy who drops the girl go off at the house, and he kind of shows up at the end. I don't know where he went. He kind of just fucking got the hell out of there. He dropped him off and then left. That was a character that if they took him out of the movie, I would have been fine with it. All right, here's your haunted house. Have fun. I don't know. And then he just kind of reappears at the end like he never left. That was kind of weird. I don't know. It's not bad. I think it's kind of just like, okay, like fine. He didn't really matter anyway. The visuals were pretty consistent all the way through. Again, a little generic. You can tell the crew cared about presentation. Nothing too special. Kind of just in here. Every frame feels deliberate. Every shot moody and tense. Even when nothing's happening, the movie still looks unsettling, so I can give it credit for that. Obviously, the music was not super memorable. I don't know, but it fits the tone and builds that tension. I do kind of like how there's that one song. And again, it is another one of those horror tropes. There's like that one song that just lingers throughout the movie. And obviously with like one of the Insidious movies, it was Tiptoe Through the Tulips. And this one, it was You Are My Sunshine. And plenty of other movies have that example. I don't know, but that's kind of whatever. Getting into the movie review, that was kind of a different type of format of a video, but we can pull up the tier list. And I'm just gonna say this, I'm not gonna lie, Annabelle Creation impressed me. I think it's a pretty impressive piece of work. This movie didn't need to go this hard, honestly, but it did. It didn't need to do some of this stuff. It's creepy, well-paced, emotional in the right places, and it's easily one of the better Conjuring spinoffs I've seen so far. Would I take the none over it? Maybe. I'll have to rewatch it for the channel, which is why I'm really happy I'm doing this, but it's a really good movie. I think it's better than a decent amount of the Conjuring films as well. The performances, especially from the kids, are strong, and the scares hit that perfect middle ground between fun and terrifying. Sure, it falls into a few horror cliches and loses a little momentum near the end, but overall, it's a legitimately solid horror flick. I would not mind watching that with a group of friends again. You know, the kind of movie you throw on in October again when you want the chills, but also an actual story. I do think it's a pretty effective Halloween film. It's got heart, it's got scares, and it actually respects the audience's intelligence. It doesn't add too many super weird like plot inconsistencies. The whole scarecrow thing, that was a fiasco, but definitely one of the better modern supernatural horrors I've seen. Annabelle Creation, I'm gonna go ahead and give this an 8 out of 10. I think it's an alarmingly amazing movie, and it's a perfect watch for spooky season. If you're looking for a horror movie, it is on HBO Max, but I had to rent it on Amazon Prime Video for some reason. If you have HBO Max and want to watch a dull, scary, like haunted house movie, this is great. I think it does its job. It's nothing like absolutely phenomenal. It's not like one of the greatest of that trope that I've seen, because there's plenty of haunted house films that would beat this out, but 8 out of 10. I think this is a really good movie. So with that being said, leave a like, comment, subscribe. As always, it has been your boy GZTV. Again, let me know how you feel about my structure and how I'm doing these videos. You guys should definitely be able to notice, not based on like the sections, but kind of the structure of my videos. We went with something different here.